Hello, I'm Dan. So I'm just going to take you through the first stage of building the wooden wall clocks. So I've had some wood drying in here now for a couple of days in this little kiln I've made here. It should be about dry now. It's been about 3 days. It's been in here for under a vacuum and with a bit of heat behind it. So they should be nice and dry when I get out. So let's have a look at them, see what's going on. I'm going to check them as well. To see how dry they are with a little meter I've got. So let's just fish these out, see what they're like. So I've got a little temperature probe there, it clips on, just to make sure I regulate the heat in there, make sure things don't get too warm. Just pull my wiring out here, it's all for my heaters. There we go, right, so that's the first one. Looking good, a little bit of a split there, but that's fine. I can sort that out. Second one, can only really fit 3 planks in here at any one time. I do need a bigger kiln or more of them, to be honest with you. So, okay, let's just check those. So, got a little meter here. Ooh, so 3%, perfect. Very, very good. A little bit higher, always is on the top. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's just a bit of surface water on there, that'll go away. Should end up something like that, 2%. Excellent. So, we'll move on. So, the next step is to take these boards, cut them down the middle and get them flattened. Let's go. There we go, so those cut in half, that takes the bow out of the wood, makes them flatter. And now we just need to get these on the planer over here, get the faces nice and flat, then through the thicknesser, get the other face flat and parallel to the other side, then do all the edges, and then we can start doing a glue up, and then on to the next stage. Okay, so we're at the planer now. So what we're going to do is feed these through here. This will flatten the face and make it nice and smooth. Then we're going to turn it over onto its edge, do the same on there. That will flatten, make it nice and smooth. And then we're going to put it through the thicknesser. And that should bring it down to the dimension we need it then. So let's go. So you can just see here where it's planed it. Obviously the board's a little bit uneven at the moment, so you've got a plain surface here and then you've got like a rough surface here, so we've got to keep pushing that through until we get that flattened off so it looks exactly the same as this. All right then, so you can see that's nicely planed off now, looks very different to that. And then we just need to repeat that 6 times for each board and then go through the thicknesser. Okay, so now we're on to the next stage. So we've just flattened all our one side. So we've got a smooth, flat surface here. And on the other side, we've got a rough, uneven surface. So we're going to use this machine now, which is a thickness planer. And we're going to put the flat side down on the plate and that gets fed through here, and the cutters flatten this off parallel to this, and that gives us two flat sides and an evenly spaced, evenly thickness piece of wood. So let's go. Okay, you can see what we have to do is have to do this in stages. So you can see it's only starting to take a small slither off the top of this wood so far. So what we have to do is we have to keep winding the cutter down. So pass it through, wind it down again, pass it through, and slowly get down to the thickness we need. So it does take a while. So let's carry on. Right, so as you can see here, we've got a few. We've got 6 so far. So that's enough to make 1 clock. They're flattened, smooth, both sides. So that'll make 1 clock. And the rest of these need to be taken down a little bit thinner. They're not quite, good examples here. So you can see they're still not flat. You've got rough wood here and then smooth transition. So still need to go down a few more passes, take that out so it looks like the other side. So a little while to go yet. So we'll go to the next step. Okay, next step. So we're back at the planer again. So we've got a nice flat piece of wood now that's been through the planer one side, and it's gone to the flatnesser, and that's done the other side. So we've got 2 parallel flat faces now. So the next step is to flatten these edges because these are still rough. So what we're going to do is put it on its side in here, and it'll take the edge off that way, flip it over and do the other side. So let's go. So there we go. We've got 6 sections of wood. They're all going to get glued like that in a line. And that's a single clock, just for 1 clock. Okay, we're on to the next stage here. So I've got 2 sash clamps and 6 sections of oak that we planed down earlier on over there. So what we're going to do now is glue all these end to end to make one big square oak board. So let's get on. So we're going to flip all these up first so we can get the glue on the one edge. And then just do an even bead of PVA glue down each face. It clumped together there. Excuse me. There we go. So now I'm just going to use my finger and spread the glue evenly so that we get even coverage. across the full surface of the edge of each board. That way the glue sticks all the areas that are touching. Few clumps in my glue actually. I think my glue's starting to go off a bit. It's not looking, it's a bit lumpy, but it's not too bad. We can still work with this. Yeah, I think I might need to chuck this soon. Getting clots, and glue clots in it. Okay, there we go. Right, so we're gonna flip all these down now. I will mention actually, I did need to go through these with one really light pass on all these edges again, just to make sure all these edges marry up nice and sweetly, so there's very little gaps. So we're just going to tighten these up now, these clamps, and that will push all the pieces of wood together with the glue on the ends and hold them together while the glue sets. There we go. We just need to just clamp it down so we start getting some squeeze out from the glue. You can start to see the glue coming up from the seams. I'm just going to use this clamp here just to squash the wood bits in place, because they can, as they're getting squashed together, they can sort of move and rise up because the glue's quite slippery to begin with. So they can start to move around, and then we get an uneven board, and it means we've got to plane it down more. And obviously we get sort of more gaps in there as well on either side, and it can be difficult to work with then. So just use this clamp just to get them straight. There we go. Bit this side. Lovely. Right, it's looking good. There we go, just tweak those up now. Nice. There we go. So we've got a nice flat board there. So the reason I've had to cut all these into sections, so ordinarily the boards would be sort of double thickness to each one of these sections. We had to cut them in two, if you remember. So the reason I do that is because the boards, they can cup like this, and obviously if that's left in, then you'll end up with a kind of a board that ends up being a bit wavy if you're not careful. So when you slice them down the middle, basically you take that cup out, it straightens it, and then re-glue them all back together, and we get a nice straight board then. So that's just got to dry now overnight, and then we've got a nice clean board to work with. Right, so this is where we unclamp the wood that I did for the glue up yesterday. So it's now in the afternoon, and the glue should be dry. If I can get this clamp off. Oh, he's stubborn. There we go. Right, so one sheet at the minute. Undo my clamps. And voila. There you go. 2 clock blanks. I would say easy as that, but not so easy as that because it takes a while to do. So there you go. They're going to get sanded down, planed up nice, be nice and smooth, blend it all in a little bit. Look at the wood grain in that, beautiful. And they're going to get turned into some beautiful clocks at some point. So there you go. So in this part of the video, I'm going to take you through how I machine the clock faces into shape. So you can see here I've grabbed my planer and I'm just flattening the face of the board. So once I've levelled out all the joins in the wood with the planer, I grab an orbital sander and begin sanding the wood down flat at about a 60 grit pad. And this process usually takes me about 10 to 20 minutes as I work my way down the grits. So using the sander allows me to blend the lines where the wood is glued together at each section. Doing this stops the eye sort of getting drawn to the lines quite so easily and just allows it a bit more of a smoother transition. This is really just a pre-sanding just to get it flat more than anything. I give it much more of a thorough sanding a bit later on. So here I've swapped to a 120 grit pad and continue on. But here I'll spare you the pain of watching me do the rest of the sanding. So I give the wood a quick hoovering off here with a brush and move on to the next section. So before I fix the board down onto the CNC here, I just find the centre of the board and mark it out with a pencil. I pre-drill all 4 corners before fixing it down to the CNC deck with 2-inch screws. Here I'm starting my CNC up and running a homing sequence before I do a tool change and centre it up on the board. So I use the pencil point I made in the middle of the board earlier on as the 0 coordinate on the machine. And this is where the machine will start cutting from. Just to give you a bit of information here about why I've swapped seats. So I've got 2 ways of controlling my CNC. I've got a small tablet type pad just on the right hand side there that I use for sort of immediate control, and the main machine on the left hand side I use for setting up the jobs and loading in the various G codes to control the machine with. So you can see I've started up the machine here now, and I can just leave that running, keep a watchful eye on it to make sure nothing goes wrong. In the meantime, I've begun to set up my CO2 laser and loaded it with some sheet material there on the left hand side. When I'm feeling comfortable that the CNC machine on the right is functioning okay and I can't foresee any issues, I can concentrate on setting up the laser job without much of a worry. In saying that, I still am always very cautious, so I keep an ear out listening to the CNC machine just to make sure I can hear that it's working okay. I can normally tell if something's going wrong because either the motor starts to bog down or it might start chattering or something like that. Any funny or odd noises usually breaks my attention, and then I start looking back to see what's going on and maybe emergency stop it if I need to. But hopefully my programs are set up properly, and that rarely happens, to be fair. So now you can see on the right hand side the clock frame is actually complete now. So the center section has been milled out and it's been cut out completely from the wood. So on the left hand side there, I'm just taking some care and attention in setting up the laser just to make sure that's cutting okay, and just keeping a watchful eye to make sure nothing moves out of place while that happens. I did promise that I'd resand it again, so I'm just taking all the witness marks here out the centre section whilst just glancing over to the right hand side of the laser every now and again just to make sure everything's working okay. Obviously the middle of the clock frame is on show, so I'm taking quite a lot of TLC and making sure this is nice and smooth and flat. You can see me getting a little bit paranoid here over the laser cutting job. It's a little bit nerve-wracking because I've wasted a lot of material where bits of the board have kind of flicked back up from the air nozzle and crashed into the head while it's moving, so it just completely wrecks everything and you have to start all over again. So yeah, a lot more sanding here as promised. So I will spare you the pain and we'll cut to the next section here. So I've grabbed a little sanding pad here, so I just manually go around all the edges of the board just to take off all the sort of the fluffy bits of wood there and just make it a nice clean cut. And you can see now here, fresh off the laser, is the middle that's been cut out. I'm just testing the size there to make sure it fits snugly within the clock face, and we're just going to give it a hoover off before we move on to painting. I grab my multi-tool here and just cut through the securing notches that hold the board in the middle. And that's the end of the machining section of this stage. Okay, so now that we've milled out the face of the clock and the overall shape, we're left with a nasty edge here that we've got to sand down using this. So let's go. Right, so there we go. We've got a nice smooth edge now. Here I'm just taking off the burr produced by the sanding belt. I use an 80 grit flexible sanding pad just to get me into the contours of the wood on the corners. This is more of a gentle touch so I don't compromise the shape of the clock. Doing this allows me to give it a final inspection and spot any defects that I need to fix before moving on to apply the finish. So here I'm applying some shellac that I mix up myself out of some alcohol and dry flakes, and just applying there just to seal up the grain of the wood. Shellac doesn't take very long to dry, but once it is dry I'll just give it a light sanding again. This keeps the wood sealed but allows me to apply a final finish to it in the end. Right then, so this is where we're going to apply some finish. It's all been nicely sanded down, all the edges are lovely, looking good now. So what I'm going to use is some wax. I've made this myself with beeswax and carnauba wax. It's what they use for car polish. It's really good for wood. And then something to apply it with. In this case, an old pair of pants. So, waste not, want not. So let's get started. You'll see the colour change on this now. It'll go a nice deep colour as we rub it in. Whoa, look at that. There we go. There you can see that now. That change in colour where it goes deeper. It's a deeper, darker colour in this section here than it is on the outside where it looks dry. This nourish the wood as well and seal it up. And it'll be all nice and glamorous once we finish this. Got it all on there. Can go on quite thickly with this really because it'll just rub off again and I can use the excess in other parts of the clock, so it doesn't really matter too much. So take this bit and do the edge now. You can see there the difference. Looks beautiful. And that'll just seal up all the grain on the wood as well. Stop it taking on any moisture. Good. Give it a good rub in. Just like so. Carefully, carefully. There we go. You can see the contrast. That looks lovely. There we go. Beautiful. Right. Just get this corner of this razor blade just to get the excess wax out. So we can get the centre to stick. There we go. All the way around. Lovely. So front, back, front, back. Right, let's do the rear. There we go. Beautiful. Give that a good rub in. Excellent. Right, let's pick a dry side on here so you can get the excess off. There we go. Lovely. Look at that. Look at the colour in that. Beautiful. Beautiful grains, striations. Fantastic bit of wood that. Looks great. Once you got that wax on there, looks absolutely stunning. Real depth in the wood then. Gives it a nice sheen. So there you go. That's got to dry overnight. Okay, so we're back at the laser now for the next stage. So what we're going to do is cut out our face. So on the laser software here, I've got a skeleton face which we're going to cut out, and that's the right size for this particular clock we're going to do. So let's get started. Right, okay, so I've got some hardboard there we're just going to use to cut out with, and some weights here just to hold it flat. So let's start. Okay, so there we go. So hopefully now if we move these weights off and give the board a bit of a jiggle, that should all start falling out. There we go. So we'll take that off and get it painted now. Okay, so now we've cut the clock face out, we just need to paint it. So I've got a spray gun here with some of the blue teal painting that's really popular, and we're just going to give it a few coats now. Okay, that's looking good for the first coat. A few more of those and we'll be done. So we're on to the next stage here. So everyone knows you can't have a nice wall clock without a nice pair of hands on it. So I've got some design software here that I use to create all the different design hands that I've got, and we're going to settle on these here. So those moon shaped ones that are flashing on the right hand side there. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut those out on the laser. So I've got a sheet of 1/8 inch plywood here which we're going to use as a substrate for the hands. So let's get this lined up and we'll cut them out. Okay, that's about right. There we go, finished. Move the head out of the way there. So let's see if we can pop these out now. There we go. So we've got an hour hand on the right and a minute hand on the left. Next stage. Okay, so the next stage is to paint the hands. So we've got our hands here, our minute and our hour hands that we cut out, and currently they're unpainted. So what we're going to do, we can paint them any colour, but I'm going to go with black today. So let's give it a quick shake, get our PPE on and get started. Right, so this next part, what we're going to do is fit some little brass collars onto the rear of the minute hand and on the middle side of the hour hand. So this allows us to press the hands onto the mechanism and keep them snug. So I've got these little brass collets here. So this one's for the minute hand. So press that in, and then we've got a different shape one for the hour hand, and this has to be glued on. So I need a pair of tweezers for this because this is super fiddly. So I'm just going to put a tiny dab of glue on there, just a tiny amount. And we can use some tweezers, just locate them into that little round circle right in the middle. Okay, so I think that glue's set now. So there we go. There's the brass sections. You can see that'll be mounted to the mechanism of the clock. And on the hour hand, you can see it's in the center there. and that just reinforces the hand to make sure it doesn't split and keeps a tight fit so it doesn't slip. So on to the next stage. Okay, so now we've got all the ingredients we need to build the clock up. So here we've got the oak frame, which makes up the body of the clock. Then we've got the face in the teal colour we painted earlier. That's now dry and ready to fit. We've got our hands, our moon hands, and we've got the clock mechanism. So let's get started. So on the back here, obviously got our section cut out for the mechanism. Just plonk that in. I've got a washer. Oops, this first. So I can put the face in now. It should fit into that recess quite nicely. There we go. A little nut that goes over the top secures the face down. There we go. So ordinarily I'd just put some glue in various sections around the face just to hold it snugly in place and flat down to the wood. And then we just add our hands now. So our hand first. That just press fits over the top of the mechanism. And then the minute hand over the top. And there we go. One finished wooden clock ready to be shipped.